All right, good morning, everybody. It is obviously morning for me here in the middle of the United States. I know there are some of you that are watching from all around the world, some of you watching more closely to me. In fact, I just saw somebody pop up, is it John Lewis or John Luis? We'll go with Lewis since it's the United States. Welcome, John. Watching from Ohio. I think this is, yeah, I think this is the first time you've been here, right? Don't recognize you. That or you've changed people since since the last time you came. Of course, it's been a while since we've done a live stream because I was out of town last week and just life has been crazy. So hopefully we'll be back on track moving forward. And I will actually be gone for a couple of them in about a month or so. But we'll get to that. We are moving forward with the project though, so hopefully you guys are interested in that. I'll give you an update on that here in a minute, but just want to give everybody a couple minutes to jump in here. I know we've got a few people who would like to jump in if they're going to be available, so we'll see if they're able to join us. In case you're wondering, this is a t-shirt from last weekend, so it was a fun time. Me and some friends of mine get together about once a year, and we do a board game weekend from a Thursday night to a Saturday afternoon. Pretty much just board games and eating junk food and things like that. So it was fun. All right. Welcome, Ming. Something severe to tell you about the first week of my role. Oh, wow. Yeah, let us know. Welcome, Celestino. Good to see you guys. Mel, good to see you. I have something to honor you today, Mel. So hopefully it's an honor to you. We'll see. We'll get to it here in a little bit. But yeah, now I'm trying. No, no, it's not cake. Not cake. Cake is for the subscribers. Remember? So this is something a little bit different. We'll get to it. You hold your horses. Um, cake. Uh, I don't know if we're gonna get to the cake though, because I've been pretty lax on video creation and things like that. We're gonna talk about that some today. So I'm not doing a whole lot to attract a whole lot of new people at the moment. So I don't know if we're gonna reach our 5,000 subscriber goal by the end of this year or not. So we're already into August. I think we're behind schedule. We were ahead of schedule for a while, but I think we're technically behind schedule now. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if I can come up with some controversial topic to put a video out there and get people to get people to argue about it, like I accidentally did with my PHP video. So, that's always fun. Uh, oh, good grief, man, that really stinks, me. Just for if somebody's not watching the chat, basically, so Ming had gotten a job, his first uh, junior dev role, and we were all pretty excited for him. Obviously, it'd been, I think, a 2 year journey, if I remember correctly, and got there, and they said they were building a team, and it says the first day I showed up, and it was only him, and they let him go because he wasn't up to their standards. That's horrible. And it's one of those things where I wish I could say that I was surprised that it happened, but I'm not. The thing to remember, Ming, is that has nothing to do with you. Um, it has everything to do with them and their practices as a company or as an individual. Um, Either they don't know what they're looking for, or they're just being dishonest about what they're looking for. And like every company, they're trying to get the most that they can get for the least amount of money. That's just good business. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a smart thing, especially I'm in a more of a leadership role in the company that I work for now, and there are aspects of business that you have to figure out how to navigate. while trying to still be a good a good person in ethical company. So that's really sad. I'm sorry for you, Ming. I was hoping it was going to be a much better environment. It sounded like it could be, but man, that really stinks. Ming says they expected me to set up an AWS site within a day, and the PM was really disrespectful and treated me really badly. Yeah, it's like I said, that's not on you. That's not on you, Ming. It's a symptom of a lot of companies right now. No matter where you are. And the fact that they couldn't tell, here's the thing for me. The fact that they couldn't tell in the interview that you didn't have the knowledge or the experience that they wanted is a really bad sign for them as a company. That means they're not going to be able to, they're going to go through this a lot of times. They're going to go through this process, and eventually they're just going to get to a point where either they fail or they learn. And I have no doubt that you were pretty honest with them as far as what your skill level was. And so, as much as this hurts from a job standpoint, obviously, there's there's a silver lining there in that you're not stuck in a company that doesn't know what they're doing. Um, that's not a very helpful silver lining right now when you get laid off or let go. But I would look at that and I would definitely say better now than in 6 months. You know, after you've put in a lot of time and effort and sweat and tears and blood and calluses on your fingers. I would say it's better to have found that out now than in 6 months. So yeah, and that's the thing. You know, it sounded to me like even when you were telling us about this job, it sounded like you were pretty clear where you were at, and the person hiring you, like you said, the CEO, knew you were a junior still. Um, Man, expected you to work in a coffee shop and get micromanaged. Yeah. Um, yeah, I understand the feeling that there's no benefit to that. The only benefit is it it will help you be maybe more clear in future interviews. It will help you um, hopefully catch some things that maybe they did in their interviews that might be some red flags in the future. So yeah, I mean, I agree. There's not a lot of silver linings on this one, but the nice thing is it only it was only bad for a day. So you know, find the silver lining there. Find things that you can learn from it. In fact, that's kind of the idea of the theme for today, is figuring out what those lessons learned are. So actually finding lessons that you can learn in whatever it is you're doing. Find those lessons learned and then actually learn from them. Actually make changes because of them, or allow those to impact the way that you think in the future. So that's really sad. I'm sorry, Ming. I wish that that would have worked out better for you. Um, Man, that just really, it's hard because I know the business side of things, but I also know doing the business side of things ethically and well versus what you're experiencing. And so part of me that makes me really mad that uh that happened for you, because we have this relationship here, and that makes me mad for you. It also makes me mad just as an employer in general, knowing that companies are doing that. And the reality is that they're not the only ones, and the reality is that there's lots of companies out there um, that are not taking into account how this affects you, but also how this affects the global junior market. All it takes is for some of these things to get out there and to get viral, and companies can really hurt themselves from a reputation standpoint. There was a company that I worked for years ago who I was working as a freelancer, or not as a freelancer, as a contractor, kind of different things. So I was working as a contractor, and the only thing that I had ever heard about this company is that they basically use people up and spit them out. And the recruiter that was working with me was like, yeah, but you have to take that with a grain of salt, because everybody who most of the stuff you read on the internet's going to be things that people who are disgruntled already put out there, and that is true. That is true. But and they even went so far as to get somebody who was currently working. I think they were currently working there. They called me on the phone, and they said, kind of talked through some of my concerns around longevity and things like that, because it was a contract to hire position. um, and of course this person talked it up like, yeah, those are mostly just disgruntled people, blah blah blah. But I got in there, and as I started talking to other people who had been on contract for like 3 years and had never been moved to employees, and then I talked to my lead, who had told me about some of the things that had happened internally over time. There, it became quite clear that most of what I had read on the internet was actually pretty accurate. So even though you do have to take it with a grain of salt, if you're seeing a lot of people giving bad publicity about a company, that's probably a fairly real issue with that company. So what they don't realize is the more people that they do this to, the more that's going to hurt them in the long run. And again, I think the silver lining is you found out early that it was a really bad environment, culture, and whether it was your doing or theirs, you're not stuck in that culture anymore. So, um, yeah, hopefully, hopefully you'll have something else pop up soon. Um, it's difficult right now in the job market, and I get that, but um, maybe this will give you a little bit of insight as you interview in the future. Yeah, Mel says it sounds like they set you up to fail. Um, yeah, I mean that's exactly what it sounds like. It sounds like they and the thing here's the thing, I don't think they're doing it consciously. I don't think they're sitting there being like, hey, let's hire junior devs and make them hate working for us. That's probably not their goal. They just don't know what they're doing. I think 99%, 95% of the time, companies that do these things badly do it more out of just not knowing how to manage people and how to manage projects and how to interact with developers, more than they're just out there trying to make life hard for people. Um, I don't think that's most people's goal. There's some people that are just bitter and twisted, and I think they do do that. But my guess is this is even more specifically just around they don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to bring in a junior and how to help them help themselves. Right? They don't know how to make a junior useful to them, and unfortunately, that's just there's a lot of companies out there that do that. I I haven't done it yet because I haven't had time, but one of the videos that I want to put out there is basically telling companies to stop hiring junior devs. Not because they shouldn't hire junior devs, but because most companies are not set up to be able to do it. They're not set up to be able to give you guys what you need as junior developers to help you help them. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of companies actually are, especially companies that don't have other developers, right? So, like for example, you like you mentioned, this is a very small team of you. They don't know what they're doing, and I would, as much as I wish you could go into pretty much any company as a junior developer, I would say you probably need to look for a bigger company, um, just because a lot of times those smaller companies don't know what they're doing. I have been blessed in a couple of companies to have teams built very quickly that knew what they were doing, but that is very rare. Usually, it takes time for companies to figure things out like that. So, yeah, sorry about that, Ming. I'm not gonna read all these things out loud, but it sounds like a pretty bad culture. So, I'm glad for you that you've had the experience. That sounds bad, but it's a good thing actually that you've had the experience. You know what to look for a little bit more. But yeah, that really stinks. Sorry about that, Ming. All right, let's jump into hopefully a little bit happier conversation. That for those that might be watching this later, hopefully you're able to skip over here if that was a little depressing to you. It should be depressing to you. That conversation and hearing what's going on with Ming should be eye-opening. That just because you get that first job doesn't mean it's going to be a good first job. I think I have a video out specifically talking about that. Just don't just take that first job that comes along if you don't have to. Now, sometimes you're just in a position where you need to. All right, so I'm not saying that Ming did anything wrong there. Sometimes you need to do that, but if you can, don't just take the first thing that comes along, unless you can tell it's just going to be a really great environment. A lot of times, I would say 9 times out of 10, most of the companies hiring junior devs don't know what they're doing, and it's going to make it hard for you as a junior dev. But anyway, hopefully things get better for you, Ming, and for others as well. Hopefully this is not a deterrent for you guys, but just a help to kind of look for some things as you've heard Ming's testimony here a little bit about what's going on with this job. Definitely use that as information to help you as you think through your future as a junior developer and beyond. So, all right. So I do have to apologize. I'm an idiot, basically, and I didn't realize until this morning that I had slated the 1-year celebration to be for next week, and I was thinking all this week about what we wanted to talk about, how I wanted to discuss the first year being on YouTube. We finally made it through 1 year, sort of. Technically, it's not till the middle of next week, which I also completely messed up. When I was looking at it, I was looking at like my first video instead of my first live stream. Anyway, so technically next week will be the 1 year anniversary, but since I already kind of thought through a lot of things and planned a lot of things out from a discussion standpoint today, we're going to do it a week early. So I apologize for those of you who are keeping track of the calendar that I give you. This one's on me. I messed up. So hopefully this is still helpful to you as we dive into some of these topics. These are things that I have learned or been confronted with in this journey as a YouTuber. I guess I can call myself a YouTuber. I've been doing this on YouTube for a year, so sure, why not? I'm a YouTuber. But some things that I've learned that I feel like are fairly universal, and especially as I think about them in terms of junior developers, I think they can be very beneficial to junior developers as well in how you go about your development journey, your learning process, and even things like what Ming's talking about here with the job and frustrations there. I think some of these tips can be very helpful for you. Some of these lessons learned can be helpful for you. And if so, click the like button. I'm pointing over to my monitor, by the way. It should be there should be like a button. I should have waited till the button came up over here. All right. There's a subscribe button. There you go. So click the like button if you find this information helpful in any way. Click the notification or the subscribe option. Man, I'm losing it. The subscribe button. If you're not subscribed, click the bell icon to be notified the next time I go live and the next time I upload a video, which is pretty rare at the moment. But anyway, so we're going to talk about those things today, but just a couple of quick announcements on the Deep Pockets project. Next week, I am planning on giving out specific tickets to people who have requested them. We're going to actually start diving into developing things. I'm going to do a little bit of development myself probably next week. Probably live, just to kind of refresh everyone's memory of how stuff works. And then I'll be handing out tickets. Now, You do not have to be there live on the live stream to get a ticket. If you've already let me know in the Discord channel that you want to be in the group that gets tickets, personal tickets, I have that information, so I'll make sure and send those out to you guys. I am working on getting some designs so that I can put some designs on those tickets. We'll probably do more full stack tickets unless you specified you only want front end or you only want back end. I'll probably give you more of a full stack ticket to work on something that's front end and back end if there are any available at the time. So just FYI on that, that's the plan for next week. I'm working on getting designs based on Material UI. It's not going to be anything super crazy. It'll just be basically using those components as they are. So you won't have to try to figure out tons of crazy CSS stuff. So it'll be pretty straightforward. Again, we're developing this for developers. It doesn't have to be super beautiful. So it can be a little utilitarian, at least in my opinion. And I'm the client, so my opinion matters. All right. So as far as our celebration is concerned, I was trying to think what is something that I could do that would give me that would kind of tie into some of the things that we've talked about over the last year of live streams, and that might be something maybe that I could give away, something like that. So I was thinking about what would be useful, because I don't want to just give away like trinkets. I want to give away something that's actually useful and helpful. So here's what I've kind of come down to, and you guys can tell me what you think. If you think it's a bad idea, or if you like it, or if you don't care, whatever. So one of the things that has kind of been a recurring theme for us here on the Dev Mentor Dave live stream specifically is coffee. No, I don't have my own brand of coffee, so don't worry about that. I'm not trying to become a vendor of anything, but more specifically, and this is what I was referencing earlier, Mel. In honor of Mel, if you don't know the context, there are times where I will talk about taking a drink of coffee, and unfortunately this morning this is actually tea, because we ran out of coffee, and I didn't even have any leftover coffee that I could microwave. And that really is the point of discussion, is the reality that early on I had some coffee and I microwaved it, and I made the misstep of telling you all that I had microwave coffee, and Mel let me have it. And so and she's still on there telling me how bad microwave coffee is. So I have made a choice every week that I come on here to not drink microwaved coffee. So the idea that I have is I'm gonna put together a Dev Mentor Dave coffee mug, and I am going to give that away to a random person, and we'll do that next week. So here's how it's going to work. I'm not selling raffle tickets, so don't worry about that. All you need to do, and this is going to be a little bit of a pain for you guys who are watching live, coffee included. I'll think about it. I don't know if we do have some good coffee roasters in the Kansas City area, so I might get a small bag and send it to somebody. We'll see. That's a good idea. That's a good idea, Mel. All right, so. But the big thing was actual branding, right? Because I don't do branding stuff. I don't sell stuff like that. A, I'm not big enough, and B, you probably don't want to wear it anyway. So, or use it. But this will just kind of be a one-time thing where it'll be a coffee mug, and I'll put the design out probably later this week once I figure it out. It'll be a coffee mug. It'll have the Dev Mentor Dave logo on it, and maybe like a thank you note or something personal to the person who wins. And how we're going to do that is basically we're just going to have you leave a comment on this live stream video. All right. So not in the chat. So don't leave it in the chat. Leave a comment on the live stream video. And basically just tell me how great I am and how wonderful this channel. I'm just kidding. If you would basically just leave a comment saying, something about the coffee mug, or I don't really care what you say, but as long as you make it clear that you're putting a comment on the video specifically for the coffee mug giveaway. And you know what? I will find some coffee and send it with. Well, here's the deal. I don't know. Here's the deal with the coffee. I don't know if I send coffee, if somebody overseas wins it, I don't know if they'll let the coffee into that country. So I'm not gonna guarantee the coffee, but I might if it works out. I almost knocked over my tea. Sorry, it just about gave me a heart attack because it's sitting right next to my laptop, which is, yeah, I don't want to replace that anytime soon. Sorry. Okay. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the coffee mug giveaway. So draw names out of the coffee mug. Yeah, see, this is why I put this stuff out here. You guys give me great ideas. So the coffee mug, I'm gonna get I'll get your usernames from all the comments of people who want to potentially win the coffee mug. Maybe I'll give away more than one. We'll see. If we get lots of people commenting that they want the Dev Mentor Dave coffee mug, I'll give away more. But for now, we're just planning on doing one. So leave a comment on this specific video, and I'll probably put a note out there on the posts or something like that, letting people know how they can win one as well. But leave a comment on this specific live stream video and something about, hey, I'd like to win the coffee mug or something like that. Yeah, hashtag coffee mag. There you go. See, Mel, I'm just going to call you from now on, Mel, every time I have an idea, and you can help me figure out all the details. How's that? Welcome, Justin. Good to see you. I sneaking in there in the middle of our conversation. Welcome. So that's going to be the 1 year giveaway. So we'll actually end up drawing the name next Saturday on the live stream, and that will technically be the actual 1 year anniversary since I messed up and came in a week early. It's just so you know, you can use a coffee mug to drink other things beside coffee. So if coffee's not your thing, I have tea in mine, and you can put water in it, or I mean, you could probably put a lot of other things in it too. So totally up to you how you use it. Totally up to you if you use it. Hopefully you're not just throwing your name in there if you're not even going to actually use it. But if you do get it, I'd love to see you. I'd love to see like a picture or something. Send it to me. That'd be awesome. Yeah, I actually was I was actually looking, Mel, for some hot chocolate this morning because I was like, I'm not really much of a tea person. We have tea at the house and things like that, but I was looking for hot chocolate when I realized we didn't have any more coffee. And then I remembered that I have teenagers, and teenagers drink all of the good things in the house. And so no hot chocolate for me today. So yeah, I do like coffee, John. Right, exactly. The stupid teenagers. I tell you what, raising kids. Who thought of this thing? That's what I want to know. All right, so that's kind of going to be our celebration, our giveaway. Again, I'll leave a post about that probably today or this weekend, and so that everybody knows how to go about doing that. Just leaving a comment on the video. Again, not in the chat. It needs to be on the actual comment section for the video itself. Yeah, actually, I do have one of my boys is pretty tall now. He's getting close to 6 foot. I'm not. I am not anywhere near 6 foot. In fact, my wife was just showing me the other day. He's grown like an inch this summer. It's scary, but yeah, at least they can reach things that are higher than I can reach. So that's good. All right, so let's jump into, now that we're half an hour in, let's jump into some of the lessons learned from my journey into YouTube that I think are beneficial and helpful, at least some ways that I thought that they would be helpful in your journey as a junior developer. So number one is do your research before you jump into something new. For a lot of you, that probably sounds obvious, but you would be surprised how many junior developers I talked to that really didn't spend a lot of time researching what it was going to be like to be a developer. And this was something, getting into YouTube, I knew I needed to do, and I did some, but I didn't do probably nearly enough uh, as I should have at the beginning. And the reason I say that is, I did research on how to do the YouTube stuff, but I didn't really research necessarily how it actually works, like how people interact with videos and how they interact with live streams and what to expect in that regard. And I think that really kind of set me up for some early transition, some early maybe failure. You could even call it that. It set me up for certainly having to rethink some things about what I was doing and how I was doing it. And I think especially for junior developers, a lot of times you get just some very basic information, like you need to go to a boot camp, or you need to get a degree, or you need to just watch these tutorials or things like that. And you don't really necessarily get a full view of what it's actually going to take, not only to learn these new things, but what is it going to take to actually be a part of a job. And even just thinking about Ming and his situation earlier that he was talking about, and again, this is not saying that Ming didn't do enough research. I'm just saying there's so many things that go into becoming a developer full time that it can, if you don't do research, if you don't talk to people who are currently in it, if you're just kind of following the advertisements, of become a junior developer and, make X amount of money or whatever, if you don't do the research ahead of time, you're setting yourself up for a bunch of unknowns and a bunch of potential failure and probably changes in direction, which we'll get to that here in a minute. So, coming into being a junior developer, one of the things that as a mentor that I really want people to understand is what is it really going to take to learn, and what is it really going to take to actually do the job. And what can you expect from potential employers? Thinking about Ming and his situation again, what can you actually expect to happen, and the broad range of those things, and what do you look for as a junior developer when you're talking to potential employers? So there's lots of things that if you don't do the research are going to be really, really going to catch you off guard. And sometimes even when you do the research, you're still going to run into problems like Ming did here even earlier as we were talking. So welcome, Mahindra. Good to see you. Let us know where you're watching from, because I don't remember if this is your first time. I don't know. You do look familiar. I probably have just forgotten. I apologize. But welcome. All right. So number one is do your research before you jump into something new. All right. Number two, it kind of goes along with that and sort of kind of mentioned already, but doing your research doesn't guarantee success. And I think Ming would probably help be a good way to see that, right? I think Ming put in a lot of effort and a lot of work, not only in the training, but even in the interview process, trying to find a company that sounded like they were going to be a good option and they were going to provide the things necessary. And at the end of the day, even with all the research and the work that Ming put in, turns out that the company really wasn't what they claimed to be. And the person that he was interacting with didn't really turn out to provide the support and the help and the type of environment that he thought there was going to be. For me with YouTube, I did a lot of research of how to use YouTube. I did a lot of research on doing live streaming and things like that, and kind of everything that I wanted to do. I kind of researched all the different pieces about it, but I did not have very much success early on because I didn't do the research in the right things. So just because you do a bunch of research doesn't guarantee that you're going to be successful and you're going to reach the goals that you're looking for. So yes, you need to do that research, but you've got to do that research in a way. You've got to talk to people. Here's I think the key. Talk to people who are doing what you want to do. And that's something that I didn't do when I got into YouTube. I looked at a lot of, I watched a lot of videos about how to get into YouTube. I watched a lot of videos about, software and things like that. I did a lot of planning. I did a lot of research as far as that's concerned, but I never talked to anybody who was actually involved in being a YouTuber, in doing these things. And I think if I had done that, I don't know even who I would have asked, but if I had done that, I think I would have learned somebody who's successful in it, not just somebody who's in it, but somebody who's successful in it. If I had interviewed somebody, if I had talked to somebody like that, I would have learned very quickly the things that I was not planning on doing that were necessary. Um, and that's going to kind of go into my next lesson learned here. But um, I think it's really important as a junior developer that you talk to people who are actually successful in the field and ask them questions, interview them, talk to them, find out what it is that made them successful, even if it's just their perspective, and you get lots of different perspectives from different people. That's good, because you can a lot of times distill that down into one or two or three things that will impact your journey. And again, I think that's why mentorship is so important, is that you find somebody who will come alongside you and will interact with you and help you and point out those things that you need to see along the way. So that's, to me, even more than learning the language, even more than learning the syntax and everything about actual writing code. To me, the most important thing you can do is find somebody who has the time, even if it's an hour a week, but somebody who you can interact with. I think that's the biggest failure for me as a YouTuber, not actually getting in touch with people who do it. And they don't have to do it every day. It's not like I had to have a video call with Prime again or something like that in order for me to be successful. Just somebody who is doing what I wanted to do, maybe not exactly the way that I want to do it, but I could bounce ideas off of, ask questions. And I never took advantage of that. And that was a problem that I think led to some issues early on for me as a YouTuber. So lesson 2, doing research doesn't guarantee success. It's helpful, but it doesn't guarantee success, especially if you don't do it completely. All right. Number 3, reaching your goals often requires a change of direction. And again, as a junior developer, you would think the direction is fairly well mapped out, right? You go to a boot camp, they tell you all the things that you need to know. They even potentially help you find a job or something like that. That's what a lot of the advertising out there says that they'll do for you. And so you might get the idea that, hey, this process or this flow, this journey is kind of already figured out for me. I just need to follow the right steps. Well, depending on what your goal is, that specific journey may not be the right one for you. Or depending on your different life circumstances, that specific journey may not be the right one for you. So for me, starting off with YouTube, my goal, my desire was to be doing this, right? My desire from the very beginning was, I'm going to jump on YouTube. I'm going to have a live stream every week. We're going to talk about things that impact junior developers and ways that I can help them, move forward in their career and be successful and things like that. And that was my goal. My goal was to be here, not necessarily on a Saturday morning, but it is what it is. So my goal was to be here doing these live streams, talking to people, interacting with people in the chat like that. That's really what I wanted for the Dev Mentor Dave YouTube channel. And I actually started. So if you go back and look at August 28th, I think it is, was my first live stream. And I think, here, let me see. In fact, you can probably see some interesting changes over the time with my go to the end. Let's see. I'll let you see what I'm doing, so it's not as boring. These are all of the old stuff. Let's see. August 21st was just a welcome upload video. Where's the... Oh, I have to go live. Hang on. Live stream. Go to the end. Yeah, so the Dev Mentor Dave launch party, such as it was on August 28th. It's had 34 views. That's amazing. It's had 34 views. Since its inception, this was not 34 views at the very beginning. In fact, if I remember correctly, when I first did that, there were maybe 3 people. I think there were 3 people that came to the live, which, you look at our current number of live watchers and you're like, what? You haven't grown very much there, David. You've only got six or 7 people watching live. Well, that's more than we're watching live on the first one. And the people watching live on the first one are not watching live on this one. One of them was a coworker. One of them was my mother. And I think my wife might have turned it on at some point briefly as well. So that very first live stream was certainly not what I had hoped that it would be. And I mean, just to be honest, right? It's not like I have a massive following anywhere else. I've got a few people. Yeah, double, Mel. Exactly. Hey, we've doubled in the first year. Awesome. We I don't have like this massive following on Twitch or on LinkedIn or YouTube or not YouTube, Facebook or some other platform, Twitter. I don't even use Twitter. I probably should if I want to get people, but I don't know. Maybe I'm too lazy. But I learned very quickly. In fact, we've got 1, 2, 3. Let's see, 3 live streams. 4. I mean, most of the early ones, and I was doing it about once a week. Yeah, so 4, 5, 6. So I think my 6th live stream was called Mentoring Monday Pivot. And that's where it was very short, and basically I announced I'm gonna put the live stream on hold because I need to actually put content out there that people are going to interact with and see that would make them interested in following the channel. And that's not what I wanted to do. Like, that wasn't my goal. My goal was to be able to be here on live streams and talk to people and interact with people and answer questions, and partly because I didn't do the research correctly. I just assumed that, if you build it, they will come, right? And that in some ways is true with YouTube, but in some ways it's not. And just doing a bunch of live streams doesn't mean people are going to actually come watch them, especially if you're not very interesting. So I don't know if I'm very interesting or not, but I think you have to do some other things in order to start building a followership on YouTube, typically. And so I had to go down the path of making videos. I had to start learning something that I didn't want to learn. I didn't want to learn how to do video editing, which most of you probably watching have seen my videos, and you know that I don't do it very well. It's definitely not a forte, and I don't spend a lot of time doing it because I don't like to do it. But the videos were necessary to help build an audience, and so now you guys are here partially because I had to change in the direction that I was doing in order to meet the goals that I wanted to achieve. Now, would I love for us to have hundreds of people on the live stream and things like that? Absolutely. I mean, that'd be awesome. But at the end of the day, I'm doing what I wanted to do. I have a weekly live stream generally, and I have people who come on here and interact. And so thank you for being a part of that success. But in order to get there, I had to change some of the things that I was doing. I had to change even the direction that I was going for a while. And I didn't like that. It was not fun. But that's sort of the case with being a junior developer too. And this is something I've talked about a lot, especially frequently especially given the current market of the job market, right, for junior developers, even senior developers. Um, Regardless of what your boot camp taught you or what a tutorial taught you, you might have to start thinking outside the box. You might have to start looking at other things to do or other things to pursue in your learning, or even other ways of getting a job than you think you should be doing right now in order to reach the goal that you're actually trying to reach. Um, it's not a one size fits all process and plan. And some things work well for some types of jobs, some things work well for other types of jobs. And you're going to have to evaluate, is what I'm doing actually helping me get to my goal? Or is there something else that I need to do in order to get people to notice me, right? So if for YouTube, in order to get people to notice me, I had to put out videos. As much as I detested doing that, and even today, I know. Thank you, Mel. You said you look forward to the videos. Even today, like, I'd rather just get on and talk about these subjects than go through the process of trying to cut a video down and things like that. It's not fun for me. I need to get like my daughter or somebody trained so that they'll do that, and so I don't have to dislike it as much as I do. I like talking about the content, but I don't necessarily like video creation. So it's still one of those things that's like, I wish I didn't have to do this. But unfortunately, if I want to reach the goals that I want to reach, we have to do things like that. Sometimes things we don't want to do in order to do that. Sometimes we have to pivot, even whole directions at times to get there. And the same is true for junior developers. Sometimes you just have to completely change your direction from, maybe it's changing your direction from JavaScript languages to something brand new like PHP or Java or Go or, C# or something like that, so that you have a better chance, a better opportunity to reach the goal that you're trying to reach, which most likely is employment at this point, would be my guess. So number 3 was reaching your goals often requires change in direction. All right. So number 4, again, this is going to be pretty obvious, but it's one of those things I think that you forget in the moment. And that is that learning important things is hard. Learning important things is hard. As you know, my video production level is very low. But it was a real pain in the rear to learn how to edit videos, how to shoot videos, how to record them in a way that wasn't completely horrible, how to deal with audio. Hopefully most of the audio on my videos is good. I've worked really hard to learn things and tweak things. What's interesting is when you learn hard things, you usually find yourself using them in other areas of life as well. So like I'm able to help with our church sound a little bit better. We don't really have a church sound technician person with that experience, but through some of the things that I've learned through recording and things like that, I've been able to learn more and grow in my knowledge and help out with that. So sometimes going through that process of learning something hard helps you in more areas than just what you're focusing on. But learning to write like a script and put a plan together and try to do things in a way that's going to catch people's attention and things like that's, I don't want to do any of that stuff. Nobody likes that. Everybody knows that you're doing it. And so it feels like doing it is just buying into the same system that everybody else is using. But the problem is that it works. And so, it's like, I don't want to do this. And it's hard and it's difficult. It takes time and it takes iteration. I think that's one of the big things for junior developers in your process is, yes, it's going to take time. Yes, it's going to be hard, but you have to understand from the beginning that it's going to be an iterative process. It's going to be something that you're going to have to go over and over and over and over again to get to a point where it's more natural, to get to a point where you feel like you've actually got it down, right? And so anything that I forget who said it, but anything worth learning is worth learning badly. That's not what I'm going for. I don't know. There's some quote that would help that I can't think of right now. So anyway, the point is if you're going to be successful, you're going to have to learn things that are hard. And you need to realize that from the beginning, that it's going to be hard. And even things that you think you already know some about, right? So live streaming, back in the pandemic, the church, our church was kicked out of the school that we were in due to their, COVID policies, things like that. And so we had to learn very quickly how to live stream for a short period of time. The church services, things like that. I was the one tasked with learning how to do that because I was the most technical person that we had, which should scare you. But, and so I figured out, all kind of the basics of live streaming on YouTube and stuff like that. And so I jumped into being a YouTuber, assuming that I knew most of what I needed to know. And there's things even with the live streaming process that I've learned the hard way, unfortunately, as we've gone along this path. And I know there's been people who maybe they've learned some things on the side, and so you jump into becoming a junior developer and you go to a boot camp or something like that, and you think that it's going to be easier because you have a jump start. What I found is jump starts typically are much smaller than we think they are. They're typically not going to give us as much of a jump start as we think that they will. So learning something important is going to be difficult. If it's important to helping you achieve your goals, know that it's going to be a difficult process. So just learn that now, learn it ahead of time. Number 5. Most people won't understand what you're doing or why you're doing it. This is especially true on YouTube. This has been an interesting discovery as I've gone along. My goal is not necessarily the same goal as every other YouTuber. And I feel like I've tried from the beginning to make it clear what I'm trying to do, why I'm here on YouTube, and do my best to not get sucked into a lot of the normal things that YouTubers get sucked into, especially around, statistics and what's the word I'm looking for? Monetization and things like that. That stuff kind of comes as it comes. And I've tried to not make that any priority, because what I want the channel to be something that's helpful to junior developers. But even with all the communication that I've given around those points and the things that I've tried to do to make it clear that that's my end goal is not to be a YouTuber for life as my job. If that were to happen, great, that's fine. But that's not the end goal, right? And a lot of people, in fact, most people just kind of have their own assumptions about what you're doing and why you're doing it. Especially on YouTube, they just kind of lump you in with everybody and assume that you're just in this for the money. If that were the case, then I would have quit already, because there's no real money in this, at least the way that I'm doing it, there's no real money in it. So I'm in it to help people, and that's why we have the Discord channel as well. If you're not part of the Discord channel, jump into the Discord channel. There should be a link in the description of this live stream. But people don't always understand that, and they just make assumptions. I've had even recently, people mentioning that, me doing this for money or trying to be sneaky and things like that. I'm like, I don't know what you're watching, but as far as I know, I'm not being sneaky. I'm not trying to be sneaky in any way. But to each his own. So people are not going to understand what you're doing or why you're doing it all the time. And that's going to be true about becoming a junior developer too. You're going to spend a lot of time and effort, and especially right now, it's not going to look like there's a lot that you're getting out of it, especially when you think from a job perspective or something like that. And so family members, friends, they may see you putting in a lot of work for this, and they see that you've done it for 6 months, a year, 2 years. They may see, for example, in Ming's situation where you go through the process and you get an actual job, and less than a week later you're no longer at that job, and they may not understand why you're doing something. Maybe you have a specific reason outside of just getting a job, that you just enjoy it and you want to be able to write code and build applications or whatever it is. People are not going to understand. They're not going to understand why you're putting so much effort in. They're not going to understand why you continue to do things when it gets hard. Because at the end of the day, most people are not willing to put in the effort to get something out of what they're doing. Everyone wants an easy life, and unfortunately, most of the time, if you want to reach your goals, you're not going to do it through easy means. It's going to be hard. So people are going to look at you. They're going to think you're weird. They're going to think you're wasting your time, and you just have to realize that that's going to happen. You have to realize, hey, what's important to me? Is becoming a junior developer important to me? Is it important enough for me to not worry about what other people are saying? And if so, great. Welcome to the club, and move forward. I mean, if you remember, one of my videos recently was, I think it was 16 years a junior. I spent a lot of time messing around with code and writing code and learning code before it actually turned into a real full-time job. And people, I didn't hear a lot of people encouraging me in that, even my wife, she wasn't discouraging me, but there wasn't like, hey, you should spend a day working on that stuff because I think there's a lot of potential there. No, that wasn't happening. So people are not going to understand your why. They're not going to understand what it is you're doing, why you're doing it, why you're spending so much time on it, why it requires so much time. They're just going to see that they're not getting what they want out of you sometimes. And so you need to be prepared for that type of interaction. That's the same thing with my YouTube channel. Some people are not going to understand the why or the what, and they'll just look at it and be like, that's not giving me what I want. And that's fine. Move on, save it for people who are actually interested and will find this information helpful. So, number 6, this is kind of a bad one, but discouragement is guaranteed 100%. Discouragement is 100% guaranteed. When I first started, I was really excited, and I even had the thought, it doesn't matter if nobody watches my live streams right away. I'm just going to I'm going to get it out there. I'm going to get into the habit. I'm going to do things well. And here, 12 months later, there are days that I think about doing the YouTube channel or making a video, and I'm just like, does it really matter? Does it really matter in the end? Like, if I just shut down the YouTube channel, it's not going to affect really anything in anybody. It give me a lot of free time, but it's not really going to affect, most people in the world. And so it can be very easy to become discouraged. And that's where, again, understanding your why for yourself, understand what it is, what you're trying to do, keeping yourself motivated is going to be huge as a junior developer, because there are so many things out there that are so easily going to discourage you. The inability to get an interview, let alone a job offer. The process and the reality of finding out, hey, this isn't quite so easy to learn. Feeling like you're an imposter. All of these things are very discouraging if you don't keep in mind what it is you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it, right? Your what and your why. The things that people don't understand and the reasons why they're going to be part of your discouragement are the things that need to keep you motivated on your journey as a junior developer. And those are the things that are keeping me motivated here, even as a YouTuber. So, yeah, Celestino says, my mom doesn't today, but one day she'll laugh. Absolutely. So that's the thing you've got to remember is eventually, more than likely, if you stick to it, you're going to reach those goals. or you're going to reach goals that you didn't even anticipate before. And at that point, then yeah, I mean, people are going to have to take note of what's going on. So absolutely. Plus, you'll be able to have something to look back on and see that you actually have been successful. Um, You've gotten better using GitHub. You're welcome, Mel. Good. Yeah, and that's true, Mel. That's a good point. It's hard to not be discouraged when other people have different goals, especially for you, right? Especially if you live in a culture, if you live in a family relationship where other people have goals for your life and desires for your life that maybe are not your goals and desires. Sometimes you have to still work within those goals that they have, and pursue your stuff on the side. That's can be hard, but that's kind of where a lot of people find themselves, or you just out of life circumstances need to pursue certain goals, and put these ones on hold or put them on the side and do them on the side. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of different things that can be very discouraging along this journey. Um, if you don't have somebody coming along and encouraging you, um, otherwise you need to have a good why, and you need to have a good what, a good plan. So know why you're doing something and know how you're going to go about doing it. Be flexible, as we already saw earlier, but know those things and let those things guide you. All right. That kind of goes into, again, these kind of build on each other. A lot of them goes into number 7. And number 7 is look backwards for motivation. All right. Look, and I'm not talking about doing this, but look backwards for motivation. Especially when you've put in 6 months, a year, 2 years into this process, and you're hitting all of these walls that are discouraging, that are telling you you're not good enough, or telling you that you're never going to be able to do this full time. You're never going to be able to reach your goal. And it may not be external people telling you that. It may just be your own thoughts telling you that, right? But if you're going through this process and you're actually putting in the effort and you're going through and you're learning and you're growing, sometimes the best motivation you can do is to look back and see where you started, right? So going back and looking, just looking at some of these things, from the past, I can go back here. Let me go back over here to this. So looking at some of these old videos. So you might recognize I've thrown this back into a few videos recently as kind of like a intro thing. I don't know if it's any good, but it was 44 minutes. These things were very long diatribes because nobody was watching, so it was just me talking about something. I talked for an hour and a half on some of the bad side of being a developer. This is always fun. I don't know what I was thinking with this get up, but taking the time to look back and see things that you did in the past, and look at things that you maybe make you cringe a little bit now, helps you see how far you've come. All right. I'm probably not going to do stuff like that anymore. I don't know. We'll see. But, just looking back on even like thumbnails, right? What did we do very early on? Let's play a game. And we've got some junior dev focus stuff, just noticing some of the focus becoming more in focus. Wow, that was really, I don't know if you guys saw, that's like blurry. That's crazy. Anyway, boom. So just like going back and rewatching some of my old stuff makes me laugh, first of all, but then it also helps me to realize, hey, there has been progress. Like, even though today I don't put in maybe the effort that a lot of other YouTubers do for their standalone videos, they're still better quality than they were when I first started. And for junior developers especially, it's important that you go back and look at the stuff that you first wrote. I did this actually a few years ago. I was working with my brother. I had written code for an organization over 10 years ago. Now, it was that first big project. We're getting closer to 15 years ago now, and they used it for almost 10 years. And they finally, bought some other software, things like that, but they still wanted it to be accessible to them. So I was going back trying to figure out how I could make, put that into a Docker image or something like that to allow them to be able to use it in the future. And just reading through that code and looking at the design style and things like that it definitely showed me what little I knew and how much I've grown over the last 15 years as a developer, doing it professionally now. So you've got to take some time, especially in those moments of discouragement, because again, discouragement is going to happen 100%. For sure. It's going to happen multiple times in your career, even at the beginning, even later on in your career. It's easy to feel like you are getting left behind as a developer, period. The way everything just kind of moves forward, and there's so many things to learn and know and understand, and you just can't keep up with it all, unfortunately. And so you need to take some time and look back once in a while at some of your early code and see things that you would do differently now. See the areas that you have grown in. Even from an interview process. Think about some of the interviews that you had early on and look at the way that you interview now and see some of that growth and some of that change in the process of your interview learning and growth. So you have to take time to look back so that you can be motivated. Because every time I look back and I see the growth that I have achieved, it lets me know that I can keep going, right? It lets me know that, hey, I can still learn more. I can get better. Look at where I was, look at where I am. There's so much more that I can learn, and it can be really, really motivating to just take some time and look backwards. And I do that even with the YouTube video to remind myself that, hey, it is better. I'm not just talking to my mom on the live stream. I'm talking to you guys on the live stream. So there's growth right there, right? So, and that motivates me to keep moving forward. Celestino said, that's true. I always look at my previous project when I'm struggling with CSS and HTML. Yep. Especially if you're struggling with something that you feel like you should know or that you feel like you should be better at, go look at your old stuff. You are better at it. All right. So that should be motivation. All right. Number 8. This is a hard one. All right. Number 8, appreciate criticism and listen to it. All right. Appreciate criticism and listen to it. I knew creating a YouTube channel would mean that I'd be putting things out there in the public and that people would disagree with me. People would not like it for whatever reason. And my basic plan going into that was to just ignore the naysayers, right? And to some degree, that is a good plan and a healthy plan. But the reality is that even though they may be saying things that you disagree with or that you don't think are accurate, I found that a lot of times, even people that you can tell like didn't even watch the video, they're just leaving a comment based off of the title or something like that. And it's obvious. I'm sorry. It's very obvious when people do that. But I have found that instead of ignoring that, I should appreciate that people are at least giving feedback, right? I should appreciate that somebody is at least saying, hey, this comes across like you're a scammer, right? Again, I think most people who know me, who have watched the live streams, interacted with me and things like that, know that that's not true. Hopefully most of the videos are very clear that that's not true. But I still get that sometimes, you're just doing this for the money. I'm like, yeah, if you could see my bank account, buddy. But you're just doing this, or you're just trying to, build a hype train, or you're just doing this to get people to get clicks and things like that. I'm like, yes, there's some truth to that. Obviously, I want people to click on it so that they can see what I have to say, so that hopefully I can be helpful to them. It's not helpful if nobody watches it. So there is some reality to that. And yes, Mel, to your point, there are a lot of trolls out there. But criticism, if you listen to the criticism, you can still learn from it. So I have actually changed video titles due to multiple people saying something about the way that it was written. And while I think it's still fair to make video titles and thumbnails that attract people's attention, um, that get them thinking, that maybe are a little clickbaity, I think that's fair. I think in what we're doing on YouTube, I don't think that it's wrong to do that necessarily. But I've taken advice from people that were fairly rude about it. I'm fairly critical. I'm probably not even subscribers, but I've made changes here and there based off of that, because at the end of the day, I want to provide something that's going to be helpful for as many people as possible. And if the way that I'm doing something makes that difficult for some people to subscribe to, not necessarily just on the YouTube channel, but if it drives people away, then I want to be conscious of that. Now, it may be that I don't change something, in the end. It may be that I decide, I think this is, but being willing to listen to criticism, being willing to hear what other people have to say, and actually evaluating it, actually listening to it, and deciding, does this make sense? That's extremely important, not just for me here on YouTube, but that's extremely important for you as a junior developer. And I know you're probably sitting here going, I'll take any information. I want people to tell me everything that I can so that I can learn and be better. That's going to change. Developers are very prideful people. Once we think we've got something figured out, we tend to assume that everybody else is wrong. And that's just it's a weird quirk and characteristic of most developers. It's just our natural tendency, right? Well, this is the way that I do it. And I would encourage you, as you're learning, get into the process, get into the mindset of humility, of taking even criticism that was not asked for, taking it and evaluating it and seeing what you can learn from it. Because that's the reality is people are going to criticize what you do. And most of them probably are not going to be people whose opinions you've asked. And so you need to be ready for it, and you need to be ready to use it to your advantage. A person who is unwilling to hear criticism is somebody who is most likely unwilling to change. They might change something through a learning process, through like tutorials. Oh, that's a better way to do it. But they won't change based on other people's feedback. And unfortunately, feedback is one of the best things for you. Whether it's done well or done poorly, feedback is going to help you really grow your career, probably more than just learning new things in tutorials. That's one of the reasons why we have reviews for pull requests, both on the DevMentor Deep Pockets project or in real life in our actual jobs. We have reviews for pull requests, peer reviews, so that we can help each other grow and get better together as a community, as a team. And so we need to be willing to ask for criticism, but then understand sometimes we're going to get criticism that we didn't ask for, and be willing to receive that, be willing to evaluate it. Sometimes, yeah, you just chuck it because it's not helpful. But a lot of times I've found even the criticism from people that I didn't ask for, who were just being snarky trolls on YouTube, sometimes it's beneficial. Sometimes it gives me something to think about to make the channel better. So appreciate criticism and listen to it. That's number 8. Almost done. Number 9. Number 9 is don't overcommit. This I think is extremely valid, not just for YouTube, but also for junior developers. So one of the things that I've looked at with YouTube is, am I doing enough? Right? Because I want to grow the channel. I want the channel to be helpful to as many people as possible. Part of growing the channel means committing more time to doing things that help grow the channel, like writing posts, like putting videos out, like doing more live streams. I've looked at the opportunities of setting up memberships and things like that, and to this point, I haven't done that. And you know, as well as I know, that the level of video creation has gone down, not necessarily in quality, but in quantity, right? So at one point, I was putting about 3 videos out a week. Now I'm lucky if I get 1 video out a week. I didn't get any videos out last week. Um, Even some of the live streams have been hit or miss lately due to uh, work responsibilities and family responsibilities and things like that. Um, and so I don't know that I ever set a specific expectation early on, but I had my own internal goals and commitments that I was going to do 3 videos a week and I was going to do a live stream a week. And eventually I was going to build up to where I had a membership. So I'd have a members live stream only at some point. And I'm not saying that those things are not going to happen in the future, but what I am saying is don't overcommit because you don't know what's going to happen. Do what is reasonable within your current time frame and add to that as you're able to. This is really important for junior developers. It's easy, especially when you're learning stuff and you're excited about it. It's easy to put a lot of time in up front. And then when you really start getting into the nitty gritty and the hard parts of the job, and you start dealing with learning stuff that maybe you're not as interested in, but you need to in order to get interviews, in order to get jobs. If you've told yourself, I'm going to do this for 4 hours every day, you know that's probably not a good place to start, because you're going to hit a point where you're not going to do that. You're not going to spend 4 hours a day working on it because you're going to be tired of it. So you need to set commitments for yourself and with others that are reasonable and that can be sustained long term, right? Generally, doing a live stream on a Saturday morning is something that can be sustained long term. Theoretically, doing 1 video a week is something that should be sustainable long term. Now, again, are there things that are going to pop up? Absolutely. There's going to be things that get in the way, but don't overcommit early on to yourself or to other people. All right. And it's really important. It's easy. Sometimes it's easy to not commit to other people, but sometimes we make commitments to ourselves, and if we're really honest with ourselves, we know it's not going to be sustainable, right? How many people make a commitment to themselves to go to the gym, 3 times a week or 5 times a week or whatever it is, and within the first 4 weeks, they're not doing anywhere near that if they've even still gone to the gym. I'm certainly not one to talk when it comes to health and things like that, but the reality is we often make plans for ourselves. We often overcommit to ourselves along the journey, especially as developers. I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. Maybe it's even a freelance project, or maybe it's a project that you're building on the side and you're like, I'm going to get this done in 2 months. Well, is that really reasonable? Are you setting yourself up for failure by overcommitting? And that's one of the things that I don't know if I committed obviously early on, but I certainly gave the appearance of commitment to certain things overall. And I think as you look, as we've hit the end of the year here, the first year of YouTube, it in some ways it could look like it's less like I'm not fulfilling commitments. But the reality, I'm just trying to find what those commitments should be, and that's part of the process, is figuring out what those right commitment levels should be for the different areas of your life. All right. So number 9, don't overcommit. Number 10, last lesson learned. Actually, there's probably more lessons learned, but this is the last one that I'll put in there because it's even more focused on you guys than anything, and that is be thankful. Be thankful, and hopefully that has come across the whole time that I've been here. But I know there are times where, I haven't really been that thankful for the opportunity that I have here. There are times where it feels like it's just work and it's a drudge and I've got to do this, especially if I'm making a video. things that I don't like to do necessarily. Thinking about putting together all the tickets for the Deep Pockets project. There's aspects of that they're not that fun. I'm not really that interested in doing it. But I know that it's necessary to help you all succeed, and I know that there are many of you out there who are going to participate in that and who will find it helpful. And even as you guys have, many of you have said here on the live streams and in other places, I've seen the channel be helpful to people, and I've seen people be appreciative of it, and they've been coming to the live streams and responding to videos and things like that. And so, I do appreciate that. And I want to make sure that you guys know that I appreciate being able to get on a live stream and actually interact with people and conversate with others, converse with others, conversate a word. I don't know. To have these interactions with you guys and not just stare at a camera on my phone and try to talk to somebody who's not there. I actually recently, co-hosted one of the podcasts for the company that I work for, and and as my coworker was introducing me, they were saying, "Well, you have experience with this," and I was like, "Well," because we were interviewing somebody, right? And I was like, "Well, most of the time I end up just looking straight at a camera for my videos, so it's a little bit different actually talking to people," and it is, and I'm very, very thankful for that. And I want you guys to know that I'm incredibly thankful for your all's willingness to listen to me, to ask me questions, your willingness to watch the videos, as simple and boring as they may be, in my opinion. I appreciate you guys. It's very fun to get on here and talk to you guys, even if we're talking about things that are not as fun, like we did early on with Ming and the situation that he's going through right now. Link the podcast in the Discord. No. I didn't really do a lot of talking, actually. The person we were interviewed talked a lot more than some of the others do, so I'm not really that involved in it, to be perfectly honest with you. I think I asked like 2 questions in the whole thing. It's only 30 minutes, so yeah, it's not worth it. But anyway, thank you very much for being a part of this, for your encouragement along the way, just telling me when things are helpful, telling me things that would be more helpful. I want you to know that I appreciate it. And as a junior developer, be thankful for the people that are helping you. I'm not saying that to get a bunch of thanks, but the people that are teaching you, the people who are coming alongside as mentors and working with you, show your appreciation. But not just being appreciative to people, but be thankful even for the struggle and the hardship, because that has brought you to where you are. So it's not just about being thankful to people, it's being thankful for the journey. And really, to me, that's one of the main focuses of the Dev Mentor Dave YouTube channel, is talking about that journey and helping you along the way in that journey. And hopefully you do find it helpful. And hopefully there's at least nuggets of information here and there that help you out along your way, and maybe make the journey a little bit easier, maybe make it a little bit more acceptable as you go. But anyway, that's my top 10 lessons learned. Do your research before you jump into something new. Doing your research doesn't guarantee success. Reaching your goals often requires a change in direction. Learning important things is hard. Most people won't understand your what or your why. Discouragement is 100% guaranteed. Look backwards for motivation. Appreciate criticism and listen to it. Don't overcommit, and be thankful. So for those who are real big on shorts, maybe I'll clip that last piece into a short. I love it when somebody comes on and says, "You spent 7 minutes talking about this and you could have put it all in a 30-second short." Well, yeah, I could have, but I didn't want to. That's some of those times when I don't necessarily listen to the criticism. Because they don't understand my why and my what. See, it all works together. It all works together. So anyway, I know some people have had to drop off here, especially those who are across the pond. Oftentimes have to drop off early as we go through, but I'm available to stay on for a little while longer if anybody has any questions or anything that they want to chat about or hear my opinion on. Not sure why, but you do for some reason. So if you have any questions or things you want to talk about, let me know. I will mention again, we are going to give away a Dev Mentor Dave coffee mug or several, depending on how much interaction we get with this. If you would like to be entered into the raffle for that, simply leave a comment, not a chat, but a comment on the live stream video, and just like hashtag coffee mug or I want the coffee mug or something related to the coffee mug, so I know to put you in the drawing for that. So Mel says you spend an hour talking about this, but you could have 10x sped up the video to make it harder to understand. Yeah, I have. So another interesting criticism. It's not really criticism. It's more of a notice. I don't think it was you, Mel, but somebody had mentioned to me a while back that they like to listen to my videos on double speed, and they said I'm one of the few people that they listen to that they can actually understand on double speed, which basically what that means is I talk very slowly when I do the videos. So I do have a bit of deliberateness in the way that I speak, especially when I'm doing the videos for some reason. I feel like I talk a little bit faster here live on the YouTube channel, on the live stream, but I do know for sure that the videos seem to be a little bit slower. So when you do them, I actually edit them at 2x speed, A, to get it done faster, but B, because I can understand it pretty easily. So I don't know if that means I should talk faster or if I should just keep doing it the way that I'm doing it. I don't know. See, that's where you look at it and you're like, well, does that mean I should change something? Can I change something? Do I have the ability to talk faster when I'm doing the videos? I don't know. I don't know if I've even tried. Should I put in the conscious? I don't know. So, yeah, definitely would be harder to understand. You only sped somebody up who has it as a second language. Yeah. That's interesting. I've never thought about somebody speaking slower English just because it's their second language. Um, huh. Usually they just have an accent and they talk the same speed. From what I've heard, it makes it harder to understand. But yeah. Let me see if I missed any comments along the way. I thought I saw everybody. Oh, Mahindra's from Nepal, Kathmandu. Okay. That does sound familiar. I don't know if Mahindra's still on here, but um, again, welcome. Let's see. Did I miss anybody? I said hi to Justin. I said hi to John, Celestino, Bell, Ming. That's a great question, Ming. Would I classify a startup to be stable? I think you'd have to do a good amount of research um, to say that. In my opinion, I actually love working for startups, um, partially because you, especially coming in as like a senior developer, generally they're going to look to you for direction and help. Unless they're just a massive startup, they have tons of funding. The reality is that most startups do not last. Even if they get a product out, there's no guarantee that that product is going to be successful. And that's why there's a lot of investors are starting to pull back and have been pulling back from funding lots of startups just because the people in charge of the startup don't always have the knowledge to make it successful. Hopefully they're surrounding themselves around with people that do have that knowledge, not just from a technical standpoint, but from a marketing standpoint, from a finance standpoint. There's a lot of things that go into managing any business, but especially a startup. So to say that they would be stable, you'd have to know a lot of information. You'd have to know what the experience level is of their kind of their C level people. So like their CEO, CTO, CFO, people like that. If they have those people, if they've got like one person in charge, you probably want to find out what their experience is. If they've launched products in the past, so if it's a serial entrepreneur who's managing a startup, I would give that a much higher, much more. I would call that stable much more quickly because of the leadership that's involved and the history of the leadership that's involved. So because anybody can talk about a dream, right? Anybody can talk about a dream and how they're going to reach that dream. They can have goals that make sense. They can have a process that makes sense logically, but that doesn't mean that they have the experience to actually pull it off. And that's the struggle with startups. Startups don't fail because, well, sometimes they do fail because they have bad ideas, but I think most startups fail not necessarily because of the idea, but they fail because of the leadership and the inexperience of the leadership. Um, there's not a lot of developers who have the experience to start a startup and run it well. That's why a lot of times you'll see successful startups have people leading the company who are not the main developer, the person that came up with the idea. So that is something that I would look for in a startup. Just because a startup is hiring a junior dev doesn't mean that they're not stable. That's a lot of negatives. um, a startup can still be stable and hire junior devs at the same time. In order for that to be successful, though, in order for them to be stable, they need to have other developers that have experience, and or they need to have some sort of process in place that's going to allow the junior devs to grow with the company. And that would be really hard and rare to do, to be perfectly honest with you. You don't typically see a startup being successful with only junior devs. So in order for a startup to be stable, it needs to have stable leadership. That's the number one thing. Stable leadership is going to hire the right developers. Stable leadership is going to make the right decisions as to the technology that is used and how quickly they're going to move forward, and marketing and all that stuff, right? So it really comes down to leadership when you're asking about the stability of a startup. Now, obviously, the market that they're in, what they're trying to accomplish, that does play a role. I'm not saying it's inconsequential, but I think the biggest issue is always going to be leadership. So if it doesn't have good leadership and that knows what they're doing, oh, excuse me, guys, then you're going to have a less stable startup, always. It's a good question. How do startups recruit for devs when the CEO isn't technical? I recently did a hackathon and they said they'll get back to us in 2 months. CTO wasn't even one checking when I checked his LinkedIn. Yeah, so uh, we have a very technical owner at the company that I work for, but he doesn't do the interviews. Um, it's typically they'll either have somebody internally who has that. Well, there's three things. One, they'll either do it poorly, which I think you've seen the results of, right? So they'll either do it poorly, or they'll have somebody on the team who is technical, hopefully a senior dev or somebody like that, who at least can give some insight and opinions. They may not necessarily be great at it either, but they at least can talk about technical things with a developer and find out if they have basic skills. So that's another thing. Another thing a lot of startups do, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is the majority of startups, but one of the things a lot of startups do is they'll use recruiting companies, because recruiting companies theoretically should have the ability to filter out a list of potential developers. Now, it can be a little bit more costly to use a company like that, especially if they want to do like a contract to hire thing. There's lots of different ways that can be done, But a lot of startups end up using technical recruiters because they, while they may not have the development knowledge, they at least have a process for screening people. They have a process for um, interacting with those developers ahead of time, trying to help and see if this person might be a good fit or not. So a lot of startups that I've seen have gone through recruiters. In fact, oh, excuse me, guys. In fact, I don't know why I'm yawning so much. My voice is getting tired. Uh, I would say almost every job I've had has been through a recruiter, and that's both startups and, um, I mean, large companies. So almost every job I've had has I've gotten it through a recruiter. So most startups that I know of have used recruiters, and theoretically, if going through a recruiter, you're going through somebody who's going to understand what is needed and who's going to understand what you're doing. Maybe not as technically as you do, but they're going to have a better knowledge than just, to your point, a CEO or a CTO that isn't really technical. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of CTOs that are not technical in companies today. They're just managerial. Um, so that's probably the most common way that startups do it. So if you're dealing with a startup one-on-one, I would say do some research on the people in charge of the startup. Find out if they've had other startups in the past and if those startups were successful. Usually you can find on LinkedIn, they'll happily display on their LinkedIn profile the companies that they started in the past or worked for in the past, that were successful. So you can always go to LinkedIn usually and see if they have a track record of successful startups. And if they do, then that is another question. What type does it feel like they're giving you a good uh, interview or conversation around things that are technical? Do they know what they're talking about technically? Um, and then thirdly, I would say if you're dealing with them directly and not through a recruiting company, you're going to have to do some more homework on what is going to be required of you. You're going to have to ask more questions around what's going to be required of you and how they intend it working, and how it's worked with other developers, if they've had other developers. Try to find out as much history as you can, um, because that'll tell you whether or not they have keys for success in that startup, or if they're just trying to hire somebody cheap um, to get a lot of work done. So from your last experience, Ming, what should you look out for the same incident, so the same incident doesn't happen again? Um, Understand that it still might happen again, um, because people are dishonest, and you can't take all the blame, right? Are there things maybe that you can learn from it? Sure. But this is, from what you've said, obviously not knowing their side of the story, but from what you've said, this sounded like a bad situation from the beginning. It sounded like a dishonest situation from the beginning. And when somebody's being dishonest with you, that's not necessarily something that you can avoid, um, especially when it comes to expectations, when it comes to changes in what they told you things were going to be like versus what reality is. You are you can't be put at fault for that. You can only go so far in your investigation, right? So that's why some of the things I was mentioning a minute ago, I would say try to do more research on who's in charge and their history, as a whatever their role is, as their history working with the types of companies they're working for, specifically startups. Um, I think that's the biggest thing, is try to get some more historical information, because at the end of the day, sometimes it doesn't matter how many questions you ask. People are just going to be, they're just going to lie in order to get what they want. And what they wanted was somebody who was willing to work at whatever your pay level was willing to work, and somebody they thought they could manipulate. And unfortunately, that was a bad situation, you know. And so I don't know that, other than realizing that that can happen again and realizing that people do lie. Um, I would say it sounds to me like you did most of the right things. The only thing that comes to my mind off the top of my head is try to do some more historical research on the people involved. As much as you can. Don't spend your whole life trying to do that, but as much as you can, just see, hey, is this a company that you want to work for? The company that I work for now is actually a company that I've been there for 2 years now. Um, And before that, I had probably run into them probably 5 years before that through LinkedIn. And they always were intriguing to me, but I didn't really know a lot about them. I was not in a place at the time that they came across my radar that I wanted to move on. But I've just kind of followed the owner for a while, and um, just the different ways that he would talk about his team and the way that he tries to run his business and things like that publicly. And then even, I had some conversations privately about some things linked via LinkedIn. And so when the opportunity rose to come work here, I was I was 100% on board with it, because everything that I had seen, both in watching him for a long time and in the discussions that I had, were pointing in the right direction. Um, but I've had interviews where it seemed like a great job opportunity and I needed a job. Um, and the hiring manager was just a jerk, to be perfectly honest with you. Um, Both in the way that they spoke as well as the things that they wanted you to do. For example, I worked for, or not I worked for, but I interviewed with a company who who was hiring for senior level developer positions, and I don't remember if I was between jobs or if I was just looking because I was going to leave the job that I had. I can't remember which. But so they're hiring for a senior level developer. They know my history. It's all on my resume. I've been doing it for 10 plus years, right? So it's not like I don't know what I'm doing as a developer. And the first thing that they asked me in the interview is a logic puzzle. Now, there's nothing wrong with logic puzzles. I like logic puzzles. But when you're interviewing somebody who's literally been doing the job for 10 years, full time, I think a logic puzzle's probably not necessary. Unless there's like some super important, like you need a specific degree or IQ or something like that to be able to qualify for this job, which there was no mention of that. And I'll be honest with you, they wanted to move forward with the interview process, and I did not, because frankly I was offended. I was offended that somebody would take somebody who had been doing this for 10 plus years and do such a basic thing as a logic problem. Would you do that with a junior developer? Absolutely. I would absolutely ask them that question, because it allows me to hear how they think through things, and if they come up with the right solution, right? That tells me that they can think through things logically. That's a junior level question. Asking logic questions of somebody who's been doing it for 10 years is just, it's an opportunity to boost your ego. And so I had no desire to work for that company, because even though, did they do something wrong? No. I could tell the type of person they were by the way that they interviewed. So maybe that's another piece of it, is trying to determine as much as you can how people answer the questions that you ask, how people ask the questions that they want you to answer, and see what kind of interaction that you get, see what kind of attitude that you get, even in the interview process. That might be another thing that you can maybe look at to try to gauge a little bit better whether or not that's the type of place that you want to work for. if you place on LinkedIn that the role you had only 1 month experience, would that look bad for future roles? I would say years ago it would have. Today it does not, in my opinion. In my opinion, if you so for several reasons. One, you're a junior developer, so having a short-term role could mean lots of different reasons. Um, to assume that that's on you would be a poor assumption. And again, in my opinion, if somebody doesn't want to hire you because of that on your resume, without asking you any questions, you don't want to work for them, right? They're not the type of person that's going to interact with you the way that's going to help you long term. So I would say experience is experience, and I would even include, you don't have to throw the company under the bus, but you can include things that you learned in that time with them, both technically and from a project management standpoint. Um, Again, you want to do it in a positive way as much as possible. Um, Find things that you were able to learn and discern that would help you as a junior developer, and put those on there as something that you've learned. Um, I don't think the only reason to explain anything would be in an interview if they ask. But again, one, with that being, with you being a junior level developer, they shouldn't expect a perfect resume. In fact, I mean, I've seen resumes from junior developers that don't have any work experience. They're just GitHub accounts basically, you know. So I don't think it's going to hurt you. Obviously, as throughout later in your career, you'll probably drop it just because it's irrelevant at that point. But I would not remove it, because in my opinion, it'll help weed out companies that you don't want to work for. It'll weed them out, and it'll give you a talking point if somebody is looking at your resume while they're interviewing you. It can give you, it can even give you something to bring up. Right? If you notice on my resume, there's my last position was only a month. Um, Here's why, and here's what I learned from that, and here's some questions that I have maybe for you as a company because of my experience in the past. I think that's very valid to be able to say, look, I've been burned before by a company, and so I have some questions for you as a company, as a manager, as whoever, to help make sure that I'm putting myself in a good situation, because employment should be a mutually beneficial engagement. You should benefit from them both, not just in income, but also in mentoring and growth. But you should also be beneficial to them, right? And this last job sounds like you weren't beneficial to them in their mind, and they certainly weren't very beneficial to you in your mind. So you can use that even in an interview to talk through or to bring up questions that you think would be relevant to how well you would fit in that organization, because that is a piece that a lot of junior devs don't think about. They're so focused on getting that first job. They're so focused on trying to get hired that they don't necessarily think about whether or not that company is a company they want to work for. And again, sometimes you just need to get hired because you need income or something like that. I'm not saying that that's not a valid thing to do. I'm saying if you don't have to, try as much as possible to be selective in that process. And I think putting it on your resume gives you a talking point and filters out companies that you don't want to work for in the first place. As far as speaking badly about your last role, so I wouldn't necessarily talk about the issues that happened. I would say something more like, my last role was pretty short, and there were several reasons with that and issues that came up within the structure of the company, and how my job was originally given to me versus how they actually wanted it to work out. And so I want to make sure that what we're discussing about this role is actually how it's going to work out from a day-to-day standpoint, and do something like that to then open up questions. How do you handle interaction with clients? How do you handle pull request reviews? How do you handle work-life balance? How do you handle where you work? These types of questions can lead out of, hey, I ran into some issues with my last job. I don't want to, you know, be a jerk about it and throw anybody under the bus, but it's given me some perspective to be able to ask some of these other questions, right? I don't think there's anything wrong in presenting it that way, because you're not saying they were terrible people and it's all their fault. You can frame it in a way that I've learned some things for myself, and I've learned some things about how I want to interact with an employer, and how I hope they will interact with me. And so I have some questions around that for you as a potential employer. I think you can frame it in that way to not be a negative person to your old job, and still use it to help answer questions that'll be relevant to whether or not you want to work for the company that you're interviewing with. So, great questions. Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of times it's these disappointments in life that lead us to questions that we didn't know we need to ask. And so unfortunately, while we're disappointed, obviously, with you that job didn't last very long, it's still a learning opportunity for you to find out things that maybe you should ask in the future, things that you should be more concerned about in the future. So hopefully that's helpful to you. Somebody else is saying something. Mel says, I think non-technical managers can still be great if they listen to their team and fight for the right deadlines and workloads. Absolutely. Absolutely. I've had non-technical managers, and if they're on the team side, the dev side, then they will be great managers. If they're just taskmasters, they're horrible managers. But if they understand and listen to the developers, then they're typically going to be much better managers for a dev team. And that's the same with any manager, really, but especially with developers, because here's what happens. Developers tell the manager something, and the manager tells the owner something else. And I've had this happen in more than one place. And in fact, I've been part of layoffs of entire dev teams, because the information being given from the manager to the owner or to the responsible party was not just inaccurate, it was actually false. And we didn't know that because we weren't involved in those conversations. I found this out later. But there were actually false things being said by this manager to the people involved. And a number of people lost their jobs that were doing really good work. One of the best teams I've ever had to work with, actually. And all because somebody basically lied. I don't know if they were trying to save their own skin or what, but just gave false information, and that affects people's lives. So there you go. O'Neill, well, hopefully you're enjoying work, whatever it is. But thanks on the congratulations for a year. Good to see you. Glad you're able to drop in while we're still on here. So also, let's see. Mill said, I'd be careful how you talk about the experience in an interview. Try to focus less on the bad and more on the overcame something. Yeah, exactly. And not even so much that you overcame something, but that you learned something from it, right? And that what you've learned helps you with the conversation that you're having with that interviewer. Like, this was a bad situation for a number of reasons, but it's given me some insight to be able to ask some questions that I think will be helpful for us to know whether we're a good fit. And then you open up some of those questions, again, not in a negative light, but just in a positive light. How do you guys handle this? How do you handle that? Things like that. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, O'Neill, there's going to be a prize drawing, so hopefully you get a chance to watch this later and you'll see it. Thanks, Mel, for letting them know about that. Mel says, what do you think about applying to the same job multiple times? I've heard people that apply to Google could be rejected over and over and apply again and eventually get the job. That's an interesting question, because early on in my career, a lot of times recruiters would ask if you're working with another recruiter, um, and if another recruiter has put you in for a specific role, um, because obviously they're working for a monetary purpose on their end, and if the company ends up hiring me, then and I've had multiple people go through, put me in, then which person gets, you had two or three people put you in, which person's going to get the commission off of that. So they didn't want to do that for that purpose more than anything. Um, I mean, we've had people apply multiple times. As somebody who interviews and somebody who looks at resumes, it doesn't bother me that somebody applies multiple times. Um, in fact, we've actually looked at people differently the second time because they have more experience. So I think it depends. Obviously, not multiple times at the same time, but I mean, if you're applying for the same or similar type of job once a year, I don't think there's any problem with that. Um, the worst that's going to happen is they just ignore you, which at the end of the day, that's the worst that's going to happen no matter what, um, when it comes to applying for a job. So I don't think, as long as you're not doing it like every day, or every week or even every month, I would give it at least 6 months between applications. Um, but to say, hey, I applied for that, you know, a year ago, I shouldn't apply for it again because they already have my information on file. Can I just be honest with you? Yes, companies do keep your information on file. That does not mean that they automatically go back to that pile when they're looking for somebody to hire. Um, even if they have a group of candidates, there's an assumption that that group most likely already has a job, and so there's not necessarily a quick practice to reach out to people who have applied in the past. Um, Depending on how old the application is. So that's why I would say go ahead and do it again, right? If it's been 6 months or longer, um, especially if it's for the same position that's been open the whole time, but even if it's just for another position or whatever, I would absolutely send in your resume again, because depending on the software, it may work differently, but more than likely it's going to come in as a new lead for employment. And it's just going to get you. It's going to get you a fresh look at the end of the day. Most likely, for most companies, it's going to get you a fresh look. So I would say probably not less than 6 months, but at least 6 months. I think you should reapply if you're interested in working for a company. Um, I'd be interested to hear other people's opinions on that, whether you should wait longer. I think 6 months feels about right to me, as somebody who reads resumes and does interviews. Um, I think 6 months seems fair to get a second job, a second employment information, because while that person may already be in our database, we may not go directly to the database to try to find somebody, because there's an assumption that, between the last time we had a job opening and this time, probably most of the people who have been in that group have already gotten a job. So now it may not be the case, but that's kind of the assumption there from an employment standpoint. Let's see. Ming says, even at the initial interview, the CEO was very suspicious. He had something to hide every time I tried to ask something on how he interacted with me. Yeah, I mean, that's a red flag. Um, Again, it's hard because you really want the job. And so like I said, I don't fault you for taking the job at all. Even with the red flags, right? But now you know some red flags to look for in your next interview. You interview with somebody else. I also think a red flag, and this isn't necessarily true about every company, but a red flag can be if the owner of the company is the one interviewing you, either that person is very hands-on, which probably shouldn't be as hands-on as they are, or it's an extremely small company, despite what they might say. Um, Typically, you want somebody else interviewing. You want another dev interviewing you, or a lead dev interviewing you, or somebody technical. The only caveat would be if they have multi-step process, maybe that would be more okay. But yeah, those are a couple of red flags that maybe you take away from this experience and into your next one. So yeah. All right. Well, it is noon my time. We've been on here for 2 hours, which is our typical time frame. So I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye to everybody. Thanks for jumping in. Thanks for listening to my lessons learned, and thanks for the congratulations on a year, which will be the 28th. So between this week and next week we will be giving tickets away to people individually, and next week we will be doing the drawing for not this coffee mug, but a coffee mug with the Dev Mentor Dave logo. Maybe some coffee if the person who wins it is in a location where I can ship coffee from the United States. But we'll do that, and it'll probably be personalized to the person, so I'll get in contact with you. If you want to be in that drawing, leave a comment on the live stream, not in the chat, which is going away soon anyway, but leave a comment on the live stream. Just in the comment section, something about coffee mug, so they know that you're interested in it. And of course, I'll put a post up probably later today or sometime soon, reminding people about this. So there's that. That's a good point, Ming. If you leave a very good impression, they will remember you. It's just that you weren't the right fit for that period. They do give you a second chance to improve because they want you to improve. Yeah, I mean there are many reasons why people don't get hired. There are many reasons why jobs fail. You may not be a right fit right now. Maybe you're a right fit in 6 months. For that type of company, and they remember you if you handle it well. So yeah, I mean, there's always another opportunity around the corner. So don't allow this to be discouragement to you. Allow it to be a motivation to you. A motivation to find the things that you need to change in your process. Find the things that you need to look out for in the future. Let it motivate you to find a better job than you had there. So that would be my advice on that. So anyway, thank you guys for jumping in here, for interacting with me, for making me happy to have people to talk to in real life. So thanks for jumping in here. I will see you all next week, and look forward to talking to you then. As always, if you have any questions or comments that you want to leave for me, leave them in the comment section, and I will look at those and respond to them there, or in a video, or on live stream next Saturday. So until next time, I will see ya.